Well, I think that, putting it up on the scoreboard like you did, I think you could make a case that there have been prosecutions against, Democrat corruption. But I think the way I would look at this, the lens that I would look at it is particular to President Trump. When he ran in 2016, there was a domestic spying operation on him from the FBI ordered by Barack Obama. And then ultimately this Russia collusion hoax was discredited. But that was happening in his first term. And then what you saw is at the end of that term, the FBI, and I filed this case, the Missouri versus Biden case, we took the deposition of Elvis Chan. The FBI was very involved with squashing this story on the Hunter Biden laptop. They told social media companies it was a Russian hack and leak operation, so they interfered in that election. And then what you've seen now, and I think the most important fact here, in addition to them going after Catholics and moms who show up to school board meetings during COVID, at the end of the midterms, Dan, in 2022, these cases were dead. All of them were dead. Joe Biden gives a speech in November and says, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure President Trump never sits in the Oval Office again. Then these zombie cases are resurrected. The number 3 person at DOJ goes to New York. There's meetings, there's collusion in the White House with the assistant prosecutor in Atlanta. Of course, the case was filed against President Trump on the documents. That went away. So I think all these cases are crumbling apart. They're falling apart under the weight of the law. It just doesn't support it. But they were doing everything they can to prevent President Trump from ever being president again. And I think that is probably the most important factor as you laid this out.
Let me ask you, I got 2 questions now. First of all, you mentioned about the interference with regard to law enforcement talking to social media companies and the squashing of the Hunter Biden laptop, which I was very critical of the media for at the time. But then would you also say that, for example, X or Twitter in the form of Elon Musk interfered in this election?
No, I think they've opened up that platform. And my perspective is any of these companies shouldn't be putting their thumb on the scale because they're protected by Section 233, right? They can't be sued because they're an open platform.
He didn't put his thumb on the scale? You don't think Elon Musk put his thumb on the scale?
There's no evidence of that. I mean, there is no evidence of that. I mean, now it's an open platform. And so at this point, and by the way, the idea that they're suppressing stories because the government told you, I don't care if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, that ought to scare the bejesus out of everybody. And that's exactly what was happening. It was a vast censorship enterprise. Dan, the government created, Joe Biden's administration created the Disinformation Governance Board. I mean, they were hell-bent on censoring conservative voices, and that's exactly what they did.
But coming back to this idea of censorship, right? It is hard to claim, because I was supportive. When Musk first bought Twitter, I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think it was a good idea. All these people had gotten banned, et cetera. I think he should bring back more voices. But what Musk has done is he's amplified his own voice, and he's also amplified the voices of people that he agrees with. And my goodness, I've got to believe if the tables were turned that you would not be happy about it.
Listen, all I want are platforms that hold themselves out as protected platforms, open platforms, to be just that. And what we saw before was they were squashing conservative voices at the behest of the United States government. And that is, by definition, censorship if you're outsourcing it to do the things that you can't do by law. And so that discovery in that case, Dan, was pretty clear. I mean, you had high-ranking cabinet officials demanding that they take posts down, the biggest companies in the history of the world. So that was wrong. It was exposed. I hope we never go there again, and I wouldn't want to see it on either side.
Do you think that Republican Chris Wray is a Democratic plant in some way, shape, or form to lead the FBI?
No, but here's what I think. I think the administrative state, broadly speaking, has gotten way too powerful and not really accountable to anybody. And so even though you might have a head of that agency that's appointed by a Republican, there are still people who have political points of view that can exercise in an agency that, again, seems to not be very responsive to the will of the people. And I think that's what happened with Elvis Chan in 2020, when they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story. I think you can see example by way of example. There's a lot of great people that work for the FBI. There's a lot of great people that work for the DOJ. But I will say this, it is ripe for reform. I mean, there is no excuse. This is Banana Republic territory that these cases were resurrected. And as you mentioned in your intro, there was no basis for these cases. They came up then as a direct result of this political prosecution that we saw over the last couple of years. That's wrong, and they're falling apart. And the Supreme Court decision, of course, on presidential immunity makes certain that these cases would go away.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.